I remember like sitting in our church and playing this hymn and just like crying and realizing that like God was with me. He wasn't going to forsake me. It's a powerful moment. I think for me, like I had to hit that like that much of a wall to like finally realize, yeah, like I need some help, and to understand that God was there for me.
Welcome to Stories of Hope in Hard Times, the show that explores how people endure and even thrive in difficult times, all with God's help. I'm your host, Tamara K. Anderson. Join me on a journey to find inspiring stories of hope and wisdom learned in life's hardest moments. My guest today graduated magna cum laude in neuroscience from Brigham Young University, then attended UCLA Medical School and went through psychiatry residency training at UC Irvine. In 2016, he founded Strong Men, Strong Marriages to help couples achieve the relationship they desire by working through issues such as infidelity, falling out of love, broken trust, poor communication, and many other conflicts. He has been married to his wife, Elizabeth, since 2005. Having experienced many of these issues firsthand, he spent years learning what it takes to build a great marriage. I'm pleased to present Dr. Mike Frazier. Mike, are you ready to share your story of hope?
I am ready. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity.
Awesome. Well, we always like to break the ice with something a little fun. So at Christmas time, your wife bought you guys matching shirts.
Yes.
Why don't you tell me about that? Because that's really cute.
So this was a while back, but yeah, we got these two Santa, like they have Santa on them, they're blue, and yeah, that was fun. That was a fun thing to do. This Christmas though, like Elizabeth went all out. Like we were going to be kind of alone on Christmas this year as a family, which is kind of sad, especially to her. So she decided we'd do a drive-through Christmas. So people came by our house, we made a meal, gathered some gift cards up, and it was busy but super cool and a good opportunity for the kids to, see and do something for some people who need it more than us. So it was nice.
That is so fun. Oh my goodness. What a blessing to see that you guys are at a point in your life and in your marriage where you can love and share and give to others around you. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it took a while to get there, but we're there now.
Well, we're going to dive into that. It took a while to get there, right? So why don't we go back into your marriage and why don't you walk us through the hard times and what it looked like and what it felt like for you and kind of that process of evolving to what it is today.
Yeah, so I mean, we got married pretty young. I was 21. I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I just come back from a mission for that church. So like you in the church, like kind of your next step is to get married. So
Right.
yeah, so like I was very much like on the hunt, like trying to find the right person to marry, the right girl to marry. So yeah, I mean, we found each other. Our dating was intense. Like we saw each other every day, after our first date, and just really hit it off, like really good chemistry. So it was fun. It was, the dating was great. Early on in our marriage, things were really good. Still had a lot of fun. As time went on, what I found out was her family, who looked very normal, looked very prominent in even the church and in the community and those kind of things, had actually been sex trafficking my wife for most of her life.
Oh.
Yeah, and so I didn't know this going in. I didn't know that when I married her, and only found out right about when we were going to move out of Utah for medical school. So so that was a big shock to
I
me.
bet. Well,
Yeah.
let me ask you, because that I can't even imagine what was going through your mind. What were you thinking when she finally told you?
So, I had seen her struggling. I had seen her, having um, having bouts of depression, having, times when she felt like she didn't have any friends, like she was alone. And, I just kind of thought, well, what I did know going in, and the story that she told me and her family told me, was that she had been abused as a child. Like, that it had happened a long time ago. So I just kind of thought to myself, well, maybe that's just kind of catching up to her, or, she's having these things happen. The other story I was told is that she had been sexually abused more recently, but, by other people. And so, I just kind of chalked it up to that, like, wow, trying to support her, trying to be there. Um, but yeah, I didn't have any idea that it was her family that was involved in it. Um, so yeah, I found out that right before we were kind of going to move out. And you asked me what I was thinking at the time. Part of me didn't want to believe it. I was like, can this really be happening? Um, but like, I trusted her. I believed her. And as I looked back, I started to see, maybe things weren't quite as good as they seemed to be. Um,
Mhm.
kind of more subtle things. It wasn't like glaring things. So I think my response to stress typically is to go into a problem solving mode. Like, I don't get super emotional right away.
I think
Um,
most guys do that.
which is good. I mean, I
Yeah,
think
I
I think
agree.
if we had both sort of fallen apart, it wouldn't have been very good. But like, yeah, so I went more into problem solving mode, more kind of like survival, just kind of like shut down the emotional response, or just like, okay, like, what do we do? Like, what's going to be our best next steps here? So we moved, which was great. We ended up writing a letter to them, which was still
Now this is to the sex trafficking group,
to the
right?
family, yeah, to her family. And so it basically said, Elizabeth's having memories that, some people in the family were unsafe. Um, Please don't contact us anymore. If you do, we'll reach out to authorities. And basically, kind of, that's the essence of what the letter said.
Mhm.
Um, so from that point, they really didn't reach out much to us, which was good. We created that separation, and Elizabeth was able to get into therapy and start going through a healing process that took a while. Took
I bet.
Yeah, it took a lot of years, and still, like, it's still not all the way there. Um, she has hard times, she has good times. Um, and you know Talking about like the story of hope or getting through hard things, like the hard times for me were, seeing her suffer, not feeling like I could really do much about it.
Mhm.
um, it was it, Also on my side, when she went into those bouts of depression, it was pretty much me that needed to. We had kids. We have 5 kids now, but we had our first son. We had like 1 year after we got married, and then the next one a couple years after that. So we had 2, 3, 4
Mm.
kids throughout all this. And so yeah, it'd be pretty much me that was taking care of them. Making
And
meals,
going to
doing
medical
all that.
school.
Right? Yeah, that was the other part. So yeah, doing medical school and
Whew.
residency on top of it. It was wild. But talking about trying to see like God's hand in that, one of the big memories I have was like, so Elizabeth was actually out of town to get specialized treatment, for her trauma. And so just me, our 2 boys, and uh, you know, one of the big blessings through this was our church group really rallied around us. Like, we moved to a place that really didn't make sense. Like, we lived in Orange County, school was in Los Angeles, long commute for me. Um, but like, the people in our church group, our ward's called, were just so supportive and like exactly what we needed. Really took us in like family. Really kind of watched out for Elizabeth while I was gone. And when she left, we had people that were watching our boys and did just such an incredible job doing that. It's just like seeing God put people in our lives that could support us and that could help us through it. Um, but like one specific memory that I have that I know it was God's help that helped me through it was I was coming up on this exam, this anatomy exam. I had not studied as much as I would typically
Yeah.
because of everything that was going on. Um, and I walked in, I was just like, you know what, I like I'm just gonna do my best, and I hope God helps me because like, I'm not ready for this. Like, I was expecting to have to like repeat the block really, but I walked in, I reviewed like everything that I had on that unit, like the hour before the test, just like
Uh-huh.
try to like freshen it up. But I went in and I scored like a 97 on the anatomy,
Holy
and
smokes.
yeah, and like 95 or something on the written part. So like I look back on that and just say like that wasn't me. Like
Mm.
100% that wasn't me. Like I know God helped me through that or sent angels or something, that, he helped me pass that test and get through all of that. Um, so on the academic side, that, and then, um, as I mentioned, just like having the people that were there and supporting us. And
How are you doing emotionally at this point? That's what you were going through, especially when you were doing medical school and taking care of the kids, and your wife had to go to specialized treatment. Seriously, how are you doing emotionally? Because I can only imagine how I would be feeling, just, like, completely overwhelmed. I know you had people helping you.
yeah, it was overwhelming. Definitely it was, um, I felt like I'm a pretty capable person. I feel like I can accomplish most of the things that I want to in my life up to that point, especially. Um, but like it was too much. Like I couldn't do it by myself, which was hard, but an important lesson. To me, it really drove me to um, get help from God, from the people around me, to accept help, to accept the idea that I needed help. Um, like I remember during this time too, there was a hymn from our church called "How Firm a Foundation." That's even it's based on a scripture in Isaiah that um, is just so powerful and was so helpful to me. Um,
Why don't you share some of that with us?
Yeah. So I think this one was a good one. Every condition in sickness, in health, in poverty's veil or abounding in wealth, at home or abroad, on the land or the sea, as thy days may demand, so thy succor shall be. Like I definitely felt that in that time that, my need was greater and what I received was greater because of that. But this is probably the one of the most powerful verses for me was, "Fear not, I am with thee, O be not dismayed, for I am thy God, and will still give thee aid. I'll strengthen thee, help thee, and cause thee to stand, upheld by my righteous, omnipotent hand." Then the one after that, "When through the deep waters I call thee to go, the rivers of sorrow shall not thee overflow. For I will be with thee, thy troubles to bless, and sanctify to thee thy deepest distress." Um, Pretty much the whole thing. I mean, I can keep going, but
No, this is so beautiful, and I love that hymn. So I find it so applicable that that is one of the things that just really resonated with you and reminded you that, yes, you were going through deep waters. Yes, it was so overwhelming, but God was there with you.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And even the last one where it says, "The soul that on Jesus hath leaned for repose, I will not, I cannot desert to his foes. That soul, though all hell should endeavor to shake, I'll never, no, never, no, never forsake." And I remember like sitting at our church and playing this hymn and just like crying and realizing that like God was with me. He wasn't going to forsake me. It's a powerful moment. And I see it, and I continue to see it, that, as I do trust in God through it, he helps me through it, either through strengthening me directly, or which, I mean, you say, how was I doing emotionally? Like, it was hard. I was sad. I felt overwhelmed, but like, I had finished my school, I took care of the kids, like, I got all this stuff done, like, I had the strength that I needed to do it. Um, and like, personally, I give credit to God for that. I think He's the one that helped me get through it.
Yeah. Oh, and it's so good to know that on those days or months or years, perhaps even
Yeah.
when we're feeling completely overwhelmed, that God is not gonna forsake us, like you said,
Yes.
that but it does require a choice. It requires us choosing to turn to Him in that time of despair, in that time of trial.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me, um, like, I had to hit that, like, that much of a wall to like finally realize, yeah, like, I need some help, and to understand that God was there for me. Um, so it's been, uh, the hardest thing I've been through, but the best, as far as building up my strength, um, my faith, and really my compassion also for, um, people as they go through this. One thing that I have really discovered and believe strongly is we sort of take turns. Like, we had many years where it was our turn to mainly be receiving service, um, from people. We were struggling in every way. So, like financially, as a student, like in Southern California where it's expensive to live.
Oh, so expensive.
Uh, like
We
we
started off our marriage in Southern California, so I remember that.
yes. Yeah. So financially, we were definitely on the receiving end of, people helping us, the church helping us, friends, family, and it's hard to be there in a way. Um, but like I said, what I learned was we just take turns, and it's fine. Like, sometimes you're gonna need to be on the receiving end of financial and emotional and spiritual support. Um, then as you kind of get strengthened, it's going to be your turn to go out and, provide financial or emotional or spiritual support. And I feel like, God does that for a reason, that, sometimes we're up and we can help, sometimes we're down and we receive help, and just being okay with that, like, knowing that
Yeah,
that's part of the process.
it is part of the process. I agree, and I've seen that same cycle. I call it the cycle of service.
Yeah.
That's really what it is, and it's a blessing to both receive the service and to be able to give it. And I think those downtimes also help us, like you say, give it with more compassion.
Yes.
So, having been at such a low point yourself, you're now able to, help others in their own struggles. So, let me ask you this. Let's kind of segue into how you grew as a person and made the choice to start changing yourself, instead of I don't know, as I was kind of reading your story online, I noticed a pattern that you realized you kind of went from trying to just help her and change her, that you had to make some changes as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, it, the way that I look at it, and like the people that I follow in this, would be like David Schnarch, who unfortunately just passed away, Jennifer Finlayson Fife, other people that look at marriage as sort of a developmental process. So we start out kind of more dependent, and then we become more independent, and then more interdependent. So Stephen Covey kind of talks about that same progression.
Mhm.
Um, so early on, uh, I think a lot of us, when we get married, we think that, so it's our job to meet our spouse's needs. It's their job to meet our needs. It's our job to make our spouse happy. It's their job to make us happy. Um, and so it's sort of a dependent situation. I think when we got married, like I really had a big need to feel needed, which I was like
Mhm.
big time, um, and that fit. And she sort of needed to be taken care of, which was fine. So it was a fit, right? But eventually, as she started, healing, which was awesome, as you know things started to improve as far as just her ability to function and take care of herself and take care of the kids and even start a business later on. um, I started to um, realize that what I went into marriage believing was that idea, happy wife, happy life. Like my main job as a husband is to make my wife happy. So some interesting things happen with that. like
Tell me. Yeah.
so to me there's a few different lies sort of tied up in that. So the number one lie is that I'm actually responsible for her emotions. um, so I remember listening to a podcast by Jody Moore, who explained this idea that that you're not responsible for your wife's emotions. And I really felt like at that moment I was like let out of jail. I was like,
Mm.
what? Like I don't have to, like if she's happy, that's not always my fault. Or if she's sad, that's not really my fault. Like I couldn't believe it. It was amazing. so, because when you're in that mindset, you're just like, oh, like whatever I do, it's just got to make my wife happy. So I remember even like being in my closet, and I would try to choose clothes just based on what's she gonna like which one is she gonna think is good, which one is she gonna like about me, um, and it's just not a very fun way to live when
Yeah.
when you're so concerned all the time about what your wife's thinking and feeling about you. So, um, like for a while, I went sort of the opposite direction. I was like, "Oh, I'm not responsible. Like, fine. Like, I don't care. I don't care what she thinks, or I don't. I'm going to do whatever I want, and not even
Uh-huh.
pay attention to her." Not it freaked her out actually. she,
I bet it
she she
did.
she remembers this period like pretty well, where I was just kind of on this going the opposite direction. Like before, I was like, "Oh, let me do everything that I can to take care of her," and then I was like, "I'm not going to do anything. Like take care of yourself," Uh, and so
She's like, "What happened to my husband?"
that's pretty much what she was saying. so, um, but what I came to realize was it's those are two sides of the same coin. It's still being like super dependent on her because I'm like basically saying, well, forget you. I'll do what I want. Um, what I came to realize was there's a higher way, or like a true way, which is really defining who I want to be as a husband and a father and a man, and living according to that, right? So, do I still do nice things for my wife? Yeah, but do I do them only to make her happy? No, like I do them because I feel like that's what a good husband does. That's the kind
Mhm.
of husband that I want to be. Um, give the example of like buying her flowers. So I would buy her flowers, and then I would just like wait, and I'd say like, okay, like is she gonna like them? Is she gonna put them in the vase? If she doesn't put them in the vase, she probably doesn't care, and like then I'm not gonna do this anymore. Yeah. So I call that the term I call that as being a mosquito. It's like you do something nice, but you're expecting something back. It's like you're trying to suck it off like a mosquito, like suck off attention, appreciation, affection, sex. Um, or like the classic example is doing the dishes, right? So a husband will go in, they'll do the dishes, and then expect their wife to want to have sex with them that night, right? As
Mm.
a kind of return of
Mhm.
that. So yeah, what I came to realize was, well, you can do it that way, and even sometimes it might work, but eventually, like your wife gets sick of it. Like she realizes there's that intention behind it, like there's strings attached to the
Sure.
service, and that's when it starts drying up. And then as the mosquito, that's when you start like getting upset. You're like, well, I'm doing all this, now it's your turn. Now it's your turn to
Mhm.
do something for me. And A lot of times you don't even say it; it's just kind of implied. Um, what I really came to realize from that was it's really treating your wife like a prostitute in a way, like you're kind of trying to purchase sex from her by doing these favors, or I pay for the bills, so you owe this to me, which in my wife's situation, that's even going to be more heightened, right? Her sense
Sure.
of I'm being used for sex. And so, like, I had to really clean that up in myself and realize, okay, do I want sex to be a part of our relationship? Yes. But do I want to have her feel like she owes it to me? Definitely not. No, that's not how I want that relationship to be. So, um, yeah, kind of coming back to the idea of a happy wife, happy life. So the idea that I'm responsible for emotions, I'm not really, but I can still choose to, serve her and be a good husband because I want to be that. Now, paradoxically, that is when she does appreciate me more. That's when she does, is more willing to be intimate because she knows there are not those strings attached. So it's weird, when you don't need it, when you don't feel so needy for it, that's when you end up getting more of it. When you're not looking for it, that's when you get it.
So it's so basically what you're saying is that you need to be happy and comfortable with yourself where you are and not expect that other your spouse to be able to, you know, you're almost saying it to yourself as well that she isn't going to make you happy. You choose to be happy by yourself
Right.
and be confident in I'm confident myself as a husband, as a man. She can be confident in herself as a woman and and so it almost boils down to um you being able to be happy and confident in who you are, and then you're able to have a better relationship as a couple. Is
Absolutely.
that really what it boils down to?
Yeah, and the steps I like to describe in it are get strong, get attractive, get an incredibly intimate marriage.
Ooh, I love, love, love that you've divided this into 3 awesome steps. We're gonna take a quick break, but when we get back, we're gonna have Dr. Mike tell us about these 3 steps. Get strong, get attractive, and get a strong, joyful, and intimate marriage. How many of you out there feel like your life is chaotic, crazy, and completely awful compared to the norm? What if I were to tell you that you are normal for you? I am so excited to announce that my book, Normal for Me by Tamara K. Anderson, is now available for purchase on Amazon. This book took me 10 years to write, and I share 20 years worth of lessons learned in my life detours, including being in a car accident and having 2 of my children diagnosed on the autism spectrum. In this book, I share the secrets of how I made it from despair to peace with God's help. I also include a bonus diagnosis survival guide at the very end of my Normal for Me book. The Diagnosis Survival Guide includes 12 tips to survive and thrive in tough times. Wouldn't you like to know what those are? So what are you waiting for? Grab your copy of Normal for Me today on Amazon. And we're back. I'm talking to Dr. Mike Frazier, the founder of the program Strong Men, Strong Marriages. And he and I have been talking a little bit about how his own personal experience in building this program, because of the challenges his wife had from being sexually abused from the time she was very, very young. And you were just about to tell us about your 3 steps in this program. First, get strong. Second, get attractive. And 3, get a strong, joyful, and intimate marriage. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that, Dr. Mike?
So getting strong, to me, there's like elements of that. So spiritual strength is kind of what we're talking about here. And to
Mm-hmm.
me, spiritual strength is the core of it is self-worth, like your
Yes.
value as a person, um, which people will tie that to different things. Um, what a lot of us try to tie that to is relationships or accomplishments or how righteous we are or whatever. problem with that is it's based on comparison. There's always going to be somebody with more. There's always going to be somebody with less. You can say I'm better, but you can also say I'm worse. So the book You Are Special by Max Lucado, I think, does a really good job describing this principle, where if we're just always looking for, a star, a gold star for somebody, or trying to avoid, what he calls a gray dot, or like a negative statement
Yeah.
from somebody, we're kind of trapped. But if we can go to God and understand what God thinks about us, that we're special because he made us, and he doesn't make mistakes, and really feeling that value within us. I consider that like, if there's a cup and you're trying to fill that with worth, like worth is water, let's say, if you're trying to get that from other people, they're like, hey, can you dump some in? Hey, can you dump some in? Oh, I'll give you a little bit, but you need to give me more. Like, you're kind of stuck. But if you put it, like, getting that from God's like putting it under the faucet. You just turn it on, it's just come in, overflows, and then you can go give that to whoever. So yeah, if you can tie it, even if it's not God, like if you don't believe in God, but something that is infinite, like just that as a human being you have worth, as a perfectly evolved human is a way I've heard it said, like there's a Buddha within all of us. Whatever it is, if you can tie it to something that's infinite, it's just going to be so much better than trying to get it from other people. And I know for me, it's in and out. Like sometimes I feel that more and sometimes not as much, but I try to make it a daily practice. Well, I do make it daily practice to just sit and try to remember and feel that worth every morning, so I can go out and serve others and not feel like it's draining me. Right.
How do you do that? How do you tap into your source
Yeah.
every morning? What are some of the things you do?
Yeah, so my personal practice, so I get up, I take a cold shower, I come down and kneel down and say a prayer, and it's sort of like a set prayer in a way, in that it's just kind of like a visualization of like the type of person that I want to be. But it starts off with just like, help me uh, feel your love, help me feel value, and kind of bring my mind back to times when I have felt that. And I just kind of wait until I feel that. And like for me, it feels like a warm sensation, like I'd call it yellow, like a tingling, kind of fills my body, starts in my heart. So kind of wait until I start feeling that, or I can at least remember that, and then I kind of go on to the rest of, what kind of husband I want to be, and father, and uh, marriage coach, and in church and all that, and
So
try
you
to create.
use a lot of visualization in your prayer.
Yes. um, yeah, this is what I teach my guys, right, is you use as many senses as you can. So sight, touch, taste, smell, sound, try to picture all of that, because that'll help you get there a little bit more.
That is really cool.
Yeah, so I mean, that's how I do it. It helps a lot to just kind of start your day there, and kind of the way I put it is, it's like setting your destination, and then at the end of the day you check in and you say, okay, like, how did I do? Did I kind of live up to that? Where did I mess up? I find myself, when I do that in the evenings, a lot of times going to apologize to somebody. Like, either my
God's good
wife
about reminding us when we messed up, huh?
either my wife or one of my kids. But it's good. I mean, that's how you make those little corrections. Like Stephen Covey says, like a plane's actually off course most of the time when it's going from one place to the other, but it's just those little corrections each day. So like the morning visualization kind of sets the destination. The evening just kind of lets you make those little course corrections, so you get there.
Wow, I love that. And this is part of principle 1 that you teach, which is get
Yeah,
strong.
so getting strong. So
So
that's
spiritually, this is how you do it: is first connecting with God, being able to feel your internal worth.
Yes. Yeah. So then you're not trying to get it from everybody else, like what I call being a mosquito, trying to get your worth from
Sure.
everybody else. So yeah. So, and then you set like a clear mission for what you want in your life. Like that's also what I consider spiritual strength. Yeah, it doesn't have to be tied to God, but I think that's the best way.
I agree.
So So yeah, and then there's mental strength. So, being able to really choose your thoughts, emotional strength, being able to feel your emotions, deal with them appropriately, not lose your temper, that kind of
Now, are
thing.
these things you coach people through?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
that's cool.
yeah. And then sexual strength, which is um, it kind of ties into the other ones too. Um, but really figuring out, how do I want to use my sexuality in the world? Like, that's part of my being. That's part of what God gave me. How am I going to use that? Like, how do I want to
Mhm.
use that? This has helped. I've helped guys with pornography problems too, and this helps a lot, right? Instead of saying like, "Oh, don't look porn, don't look porn," it's like, no, how do I want to use my sexuality? Okay, so for me, what I say is, I want to use my sexuality to connect deeply with and have fun with my wife. And so I say, okay, that's my destination. That's what I want. Okay, is pornography going to bring me closer to that or not? I can choose it. Like, I could
Mm,
close this and look at pornography right now if I wanted, but is that going to help me get where I want? It's not. And so that just makes it more clear, like, why you're choosing what you're choosing, or why you're not
mm.
choosing what you're not choosing.
So basically, you're teaching people to make choices based on the end result that they want.
Yeah, yeah, and trying to find that based on a place of integrity and something that's more internal. And if you're a spiritual person, that comes from God, comes from the Spirit. I think that's what uh, we're trying to go for in our church right now, is more that personal revelation and living
Mhm,
in integrity with what feels correct to us. That's still within like um, the bounds of, like God's not going to tell you, oh, like, it's good to go have a bunch of affairs. Like, that's not going to be actually an integrity. Like, it's going to be what feels right, what feels true, what feels in alignment with your conscience. um,
mm.
so yeah, that's what I call building strength, or getting strong.
Yeah,
um, the next part's getting attractive, which is really building up your interpersonal skills. So that's about communication, being really good at being able to both understand and be understood, um, being able to work through conflicts, turn conflicts into more connection, because they really can. Like,
sure.
in fact, it has to happen. Like, if you're not having any conflict in your marriage, there's probably not a lot of passion, right? There's probably not a lot of, like, there's going to be good times, but like, every time there's a conflict, that's an opportunity to increase your connection, to increase your intimacy. And that's how I try to teach myself and the guys I work with to look at
Mhm.
it. Um, and then the step three is getting incredibly intimate marriage, which is when find these points of really knowing each other, being known deeply, even saying things to your spouse that they won't necessarily like, but that are true to you and important to you, that might stir up some conflict, but you kind of know how to deal with that now. And then the sexuality part, approaching that as a way to really know each other at a deep level, versus just have an orgasm, or like make you feel good about yourself because your wife, saw you in that way, but actually make it about, no, like, I see you, I want you, I want to connect with you in this way. I want this to be a part of our relationship, because that's attractive
Mhm.
to your wife. That feels good. That creates connection. So that's kind of the big outline of kind of what I do with guys, and what I work on myself all the time too.
That is really cool. As you were talking about it, I was kind of picturing like a bullseye, how the first principle is really you just working on that first thing, which is you. You got to
Mhm.
fix yourself first. And that
Yes.
second step of get attractive is all about communication. So expanding that out to helping and relating and being able to talk to people in ways that are appropriate and
Right.
correct. And then step three is almost a joint effort. I don't
Yeah.
know. Is that a
Yeah.
good way of describing it?
No, for sure. Yeah, I think it's, yeah, internal, and then yeah, like dependent, independent, interdependent. Yeah, so like yourself, others, and then working together with others, like cooperation.
That is so cool. I've never thought about it like that before, but that's a really good pattern. I can see that it would totally work. Oh my goodness. So seriously, how did you come upon this? Now I know you've got your degree in psychology and you're also a doctor. So is this are these just things that you figured out as you were studying? How did you develop this?
Yeah,
Seriously.
yeah, it's some of both. So like a lot of books kind of shaped my thinking, my training throughout my psychiatry and psychology. Well, I said psychology, but I trained in psychiatry, but also did a lot of therapy within that. Um, so I learned a lot of really good tools, and did marriage counseling did some training in marriage counseling as a resident. Um, and then like applying coaching tools like from Jody Moore and like her, like Brooke Castillo and those folks, and then yeah, entrepreneurship. So it's been like a lot of things, but then the main thing was just looking at my own life and marriage and okay, like what did I need to apply here? What really created the breakthroughs for me? Is there some pattern in it that I can pull out here that'll be useful? Um, yeah, it helped me a ton. Then I just went out and shared it with other guys. You know, they had really good results too. Um, so I work with men and with couples um, that are going through this. So yeah, like anywhere from affairs where it's in big trouble versus like more like ours where it was okay, like it was good, but you wanted it to go that next level. There's good, it's all that like um, underlying stuff that you don't think about, that the mosquito stuff, the self-worth stuff that's not as evident. You have to kind of dig a little bit. Like an affair, it's clear,
Sure.
that happened. It's time to like got to do some stuff to deal with that. Um, but yeah, the same principles apply. Um, with infidelity, it's about rebuilding trust, and the way you do that is by becoming a trustworthy person, which is really
Sure.
spiritual strength and being a man of your word.
So let me ask you this. I'm sure there are people out there listening right now who are thinking and hearing your story and relating to it. What would you say to them as far as to give them hope or to give them some tips that they can just start on like today?
Yeah. So I would say, like, if you are, let's just say you're in a marriage where you just don't feel like there's the connection that you would like there to be. Um, I think what I'd look at very first is really digging into that idea of, am I trying to get my sense of worth from my spouse in some way? Um, the way you'll know is if you're saying stuff like, "Oh, my wife just doesn't appreciate me," or "My husband just doesn't appreciate me," or like, "If they would just have sex with me more often, then I'd be happy," or if they would just notice, if they just make dinner more or whatever, right? Like
Mm,
anything, if you're like, if this happened, then I would be happy, like you're off course, right?
okay.
Because you're giving your spouse all of the power over your emotional life, um, which is awful in a lot of ways. It's awful because now you have no control over your emotional life because your spouse is in charge of it. It's awful because they have a responsibility that they don't want and never signed up for. But the worst part is there's nothing you can do about it except try to
Mm,
change your spouse, which doesn't work. And so if you find yourself saying that, oh, if she would just this, then I'd be happy, or if he would just this, then I'd be happy, you're like, well, wait a second, you know, I don't want to give them that much power. Like I want to be able to find joy in my own life. And sure, like, can I, this is the part of it, creating intimacy as well, is realizing that you are just as valuable as your spouse, right? That you can make requests and say, hey, I'd like this. I'd like you to do this. But then not being like, if you don't, then you hate me. And if you don't, then I'm going to like be feeling awful. Right.
right.
Uh, so it's a balance. But what it comes down to is, understanding you have value, understand your spouse has value, and then trying to find, things that work for both of you. Um, you want your marriage to feel like you're both winning, not like you're losing and your spouse is winning, or you're winning and they're losing.
Right. No, that's really cool. Wow, this has been so enlightening. This has been really fun to talk because I guess I've never really paused to think about things in quite the way you phrased them. It's been really, really fun. Let me ask you this. What about people who have a spouse who's unwilling to change? Like they're willing to get the therapy and their spouse is not.
Yeah, so that's most of the guys I work with.
Their wives are making them come.
So I have some of those too, and that doesn't typically work very well. You
Yeah, I'm
usually,
sure it doesn't actually.
yeah. Um, so what I'd say again is this is the same thing popping up, right? Where you're saying, oh, if my spouse would just change, then I'd be happy. Or if my spouse would go to therapy with me, then, we could kind of put things together. Um, so what I would say to that is this, like, you can be happy now, like you have that option. Um, what you will end up needing to decide at some point, right, is, you know, is this marriage going to be what I choose to be? Is this the person I'm going to choose to be with, or is it not? Um, and you need to build up your own. The way I put it to guys is you need to build up your own strength and attractiveness. Same idea for women, right? You want to build up that strength and know you're a good choice. Like, know you're worth choosing. That's what a lot of my guys struggle with, is like really feeling like they're worth choosing and a good choice, and that it's worth it. They are worth making requests in their marriage, that they are worth saying, hey, I don't like this, I want this better. Um, and being willing at some point to say, yeah, if things don't improve, I am willing to leave this marriage. Um, because if you're never willing to leave and you're just going to try to control your spouse all the time, like, you're stuck.
Mm,
You're stuck because you can't change your spouse.
no.
and and there's things you can do that will influence that, and that's what we talk about, right? Is you becoming more attractive, you making requests, you setting boundaries. So that's kind of the part of intimacy we didn't get to, so I'm glad you brought this up. So making requests, saying, I'd like you to do this, or I'd like you to stop doing this. And then behind that is also a boundary. If you continue doing this, I will do this. If you refuse to do this, then I will do this. A boundary, people always think, is like telling your spouse what to do. It's not. What it is you being clear on what your action will be if something
Mhm.
happens or does
And
not
then
happen.
following through with it.
Yes. So that's it. Yeah, that's what a lot of people kind of have a hard time with, and it takes a lot of thought and prayer, and you got to be super clear on what are those, what I call deal breakers. What are the deal breakers in the marriage? Because yeah, that's hard. It's super hard to come to your spouse and say, hey, this has been going on a long time. If it continues, I'm going to file for divorce. Um, and I want to go to therapy to help prevent that, because I choose you. I want to be with you. But if you won't do this, then I can't stay in this marriage. That's incredibly difficult. Um, but if it's to that point, that's what's in your control, is what you will do. What's not in your control is what your spouse will do. You make the request, and then you set the boundary, right? Here's what I'd like. If that doesn't happen, here's what I will do.
It's almost standing up for your own self-worth.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's protecting that first bullet point, when we were talking about
Yeah.
how I was defining it as concentric circles.
Yeah.
It's
The
protecting
way,
that I have worth. And if you're not going to
yes,
value me as a person, if you're going to keep having affairs or whatever it is,
right.
then I value myself enough that I know you're not, and I'm going to step away from it.
Right.
So
Yeah. The only thing I would caution in that is sometimes people take that approach much too far. and,
mm,
and they're kind of like, oh, well, I value me. So, like, if you don't tell me I'm great every day and, have sex with me more, then I'm leaving. Right.
mm,
And that's part of that same problem, right? Of
yeah,
trying, it's subtle, right? But it's actually still trying to get your worth from your spouse.
I can see that. I can
Yeah.
totally see that. It's a
So,
fine line to walk, isn't it?
yeah. So to me, what I really believe strongly is that marriage is the place where you practice the second great commandment, which is love your neighbor as yourself. Love your spouse equally to yourself. So that's what I consider as yourself, equal, not more
Mm-hmm.
than yourself, not less than yourself, equal to yourself. And yeah, it's a balance. You got to find it. But that's really the tool there, is being able to make a request. Because a lot of times people will do this and they will have never even made a clear request of their spouse. Like, they're like, fine, you don't appreciate me, yeah, I'm leaving. But they've never said, hey, I'd really like it if you would, just say thank you on the days that I make meals. That would mean a lot to me. Um, and then their spouse would be like, oh yeah, cool. Probably is how they'd respond.
Right,
But
right. You would hope.
and they may say no, right? And so, and that's where it gets a little more gray, right? Is in these areas where there's just been kind of like a lot of neglect, or a lot of, you know, not responding to a person's requests for a long time. You know, it's more gray than saying, like, if you have another affair, I'll leave. That's pretty clear. If you keep screaming at me, you keep hitting me, I'm going to leave. That's pretty clear.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's like, hey, I've asked you a lot of times to make sex an important part of our marriage, and you just haven't, or I've asked you a lot of times to, um, I'm careful about the appreciation one, just because if you're so needy for someone to always say thank you, thank you, thank you, to me that's saying you probably need to work on appreciating what you're doing yourself more.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
because like, you may find someone that's going to say thank you, thank you, thank you all the time, but probably what will happen is you'll start to doubt it, and
Mm-hmm.
want something else, because
Yeah.
you haven't built up that appreciation of yourself and what you're doing enough. um, so coming back to Brooke Castillo, one thing she says that I really like is, like, you can leave your marriage, but you want to be happy first. I think
Mm.
that's like a really good principle.
Wow. That is deep, man. That's really good. And it does, I love how you phrased it, how the marriage is applying that second great commandment, because
Yeah,
as yourself, that means you have to love yourself
right,
in order to love another person. So you really
right.
have to have that foundation and that self-worth
Yes.
if you're going to show true love to someone else. Because if you can't truly love yourself, it's going to be hard for you to love somebody else. So you
Yeah.
start with you, and you
Yeah.
can control you,
Right. Exactly.
right?
Yeah, and it steps up over time, and you know as you increase your love for yourself, you increase your love for others. As you start accepting more of the negative in yourself, you can accept that more in others. Um,
Mm,
but yeah, it's a great process. What Jennifer Finlayson Fife says is that marriage is a divine institution because it does force us to grow. If you will take that opportunity, right? It makes you grow up. It makes you look at and find those areas where you have not developed yourself in those areas, spiritual, mental, emotional, sexual. Um, and yeah, it's what David Schnarch calls it. It's the people growing machine. It's helped people grow forever. Um, and I believe that very strongly.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I think you're attracted to people that will help you grow in the right ways.
that's true. So let me ask you this. I'm sure there's going to be people out there who are listening to you and they're like, dude, how do I connect to Dr. Mike? Seriously, how do I connect? I want to talk to him. I want to see what he's got going. Maybe I need some counseling for myself or my spouse. How do they find out more about you? How do they connect with you?
Yeah, great. Thanks for asking. So I have a podcast as well. It's called Strong Men, Strong Marriages. So you can listen on that. If you do start listening, I would recommend starting from the very beginning. Like the first about 4 episodes will give you sort of an intro. And then from there, you can kind of pick and choose. But the first 4 are kind of designed to give you a sort of a jumping off point. And then my website is also strongmarriages.com. And that's where you can find out about my program, which is called the Strong Man System. So you come in there, you're going to go through what we just talked about, building strength, becoming attractive, creating more intimacy. If you are looking for some one-on-one coaching, you can send me an email. My email's on there, and let me know. I have some availability for that, and those are kind of the main places to find me.
That is awesome. So, final bit of hope that you can offer people coming from a point in your life when your marriage was not doing so great to where you are now. What would you say to people to give them hope?
Yeah, what I'd say is, there is light at the end of this. That, like, if you will use this as an opportunity to um, build up that strength, to come closer to God, if you believe in God, um, like, this can be, and it will be, like, one of the best things that can happen to you if you choose to say, yeah, I'm going to use this time to really deepen my relationship with God, to look at how he's going to help me, to rely on him. um, you know there's the scripture that says, he's going to be on your right hand, on your left, and his angels are around about you to bear you up. Like, if you look for that, you'll see it, and that will really increase your faith, and be one of the best experiences of your life.
Wow. Thank you, Dr. Mike Frazier. This has been such an honor to have you come on and share not only your story, but the process that you've seen work not only in your life, but in the lives of others, that healing is possible,
Yes.
that connection, no matter the relationship, is possible when people apply principles, correct principles to their life and to their marriage. Hey, thanks so much for listening to today's show. I know that there are many of you out there that are going through a hard time, and I hope you found things that have been useful today as you listen to the podcast. If you would like to access the show notes from today's podcast, visit my website. It is storiesofhopepodcast.com. That is where you'll find favorite quotes from today's episode and shareable memes. And those are fun because you can share them with your friends on social media. You will also find the links mentioned throughout today's episode, so you don't have to remember what those were. And also all the tips that were shared. Sometimes tips are shared so much throughout an episode you forget what were those great things. So go to the show notes, storiesofhopepodcast.com, to look up these fantastic resources. If someone kept coming to mind during today's episode, perhaps that means that you should share this with them. Maybe there was a story shared or a tip that they really, really need to hear. So go ahead and share this episode with them. May God bless you, especially if you are struggling, with hope to carry on and with the strength to keep going when things get tough. Remember to walk with Christ, and He will help bear that burden. Above all else, remember, God loves you.